in this podcast. I guess I'm getting a lot of material, and I hope it doesn't come out too fast for everyone. But hey, when you're excited about something new, I guess you want to do it a lot. And in this episode, we're going to have a couple call-ins, a recap, and the highlight of this particular podcast is I finally was able to get my wife to agree to a brief interview where I ask her about her character in the Savage World Deadlands game. So enjoy. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for the call-ins from Evil Jeff of Minions and Musings and Jason Connerly of Nerds Variety RPG Cast. And of course, thank you to my wife, Amy, who gave a really good interview. I think she has a better voice than I do for this type of format, of entertainment format. So hopefully we'll hear more of her in the future. The horsemen are drawing nearer. On leather steeds they ride. They've come to take your life. On through the dead of night. With the four horsemen ride, or choose your fate and die.
Carl, it's Evil Jeff. Hey, just started up on your podcast. I got through the first one with the reviews, everything, good stuff. Sound pretty good there. But what really caught my attention was your trailer, and where you mentioned you're running a lab, and I couldn't quite make out what it was. It sounded like aging and something else. But I definitely am going to have to pick your brain more about that. That sounds right up my alley with things that I did in college and everything. We'll check you out and see what else is going on in the rest of your podcast later. Carl, it's Evil Jeff. Hey, just listened to podcast where you did the quick review of the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Edition 4 character creation, such. Really do appreciate that. Seems like they haven't really changed a huge amount since when I played, so that's always a good thing. The additional experience points sounded like a nice way to advance up the character a little bit. So, and if you're going to give somebody a lot of XP for just totally taking it random, man, that's not too bad. I like that. Though it definitely would be one of those that I'd look at the results to see if I really felt that way about the character. Keep up the good work. Catch you later.
Thanks for calling, Jeff. That's Evil Jeff from Minions and Musings podcast. And that is neurodegenerative disease. So Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. I have some animal models in the model organism I study, C. elegans, that are humanized and have humanized tau and Parkinson's mutants in them. And I manipulate them because a C. elegans worm is like a test tube, living test tube, and kind of see what happens when I either increase or decrease a particular gene that might be in the pathway to help or make these diseases worse. And I have no problem sharing about Warhammer Fantasy. It definitely is our home group's favorite game because of the grimdark and the crazy situations that these players get themselves in, either in the last campaign, which we finished, Terror in Talabheim, and in this campaign, which is off to a rip-roaring start in the Enemy Within campaign. So I'm going to try to talk these guys into maybe some actual play. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm going to try that kind of thing, or at least interview them like I did with the Deadlands group. So thanks for the encouragement. Definitely more Warhammer.
Okay, finally caught up on your last two podcasts. We have Death Clock and Metallica Enter Sandman. Barry is right. It's much better if we be on your podcast than on my hack of a podcast. And I look forward to hearing the rest of that Warhammer Fantasy recap. Although I would quibble that the rule of cools where you, the GM, let cool things happen even if the rules don't support them, as opposed to when cool things happen and the dice do support them. So I would quibble with that. I'm not necessarily saying that the GM cheats to allow cool things to happen, but in the rule of cool, typically you would let things happen that wouldn't normally happen because it's cool.
Hey, Jason, thanks for calling again. I think that is a very good point. Maybe rule of cool is something that is not dice driven and just happens, and we don't roll dice and we just let it go. We don't look up the rule. So I think in this case, in my case of my games with my home group, then, although hilarity somewhat in a macabre way ensued during the tavern brawl, the rule of cool took place when one of the players had his steam jack bust through a wall, and it was like a Kool-Aid oh yeah moment. So I think that's more rule of cool, where we didn't look it up, we didn't see how strong the wall was. He just said, I want to do it, and I said, sure. Is that more rule of cool for you? Hi all, I'm going to give a quick recap of a game that I played on Saturday. And it's a game that I've played before, or run before, and actually haven't played as a player. And that game is Star Trek Adventures. So I played in a charity session run by Kevin Madison of Dungeon Musings podcast and YouTube actual play. And in this game, he had put out as a poll to people who contributed what type of adventure, so what era, what adversary, what was going on in the adventure, and people contributed, and the end result was Star Trek Next Generation era, Klingons would be the adversary, and it'd be some sort of natural disaster. So my character, I played the science officer, an Andorian named Commander Tassal, and I had a really good time. I wasn't like up front. Usually I play like a beat 'em up, and this time I played, I hope, something more cerebral. And the game, what I like and what I appreciate about Kevin's games is that he always is very good at having a self-contained adventure, especially for these one-off charity sessions. And I really enjoy the Modifius 2D20 system. And I think Star Trek Adventures is not as granular as, say, Infinity or Mutant Chronicles or Conan, but it has a really good feel and captures to me the vibe of the Star Trek universe. And I definitely, so for example, you have your attributes, there are 6 attributes, but then you don't have a big skill list like in other of the Modifius 2D20 incarnations, but you have disciplines. But the character sheet worked really well. I think what's also very neat is we have a big support entity in the ship. So when we need like an aid, we can go to the ship and see what systems it has and roll to see if we get an aid. I enjoyed that aspect of it. The adventure, we responded to distress signal, and it turned out to be a I don't know if it was a Klingon trap, but Klingons were involved. We had to go into the neutral zone to try to rescue this planet from devastation or doom. And when we got there, there were Klingons there. There was not just a big Klingon capital ship, but also a hidden ship that we discovered. A lot of science roles, a lot of tech roles, a lot of engineering roles to help with the ship. So even though we didn't get into a lot of pew-pew combat, there was definitely that feel of tension and danger, and I liked how that worked in this game. And in general, how I feel like every time I've run or played Star Trek Adventures, it seems like an episode of Star Trek in whatever era you're set the adventure in. So we did have some ship combat, but because of some great rolls, it wasn't that long. The player rolled very well and used all their meta currencies available. In this case, you have determination. In this case, where you can get that 1 on the dice, which counts if you have a focus. I think even if you don't have a focus, it counts as 2 successes. And then people contributed and rolled really well to aid and to help, and he basically blew away a hidden bird of prey that had made itself known while the science team and away team was rushing down to the planet to try to disable this anomaly that the Klingons had developed, apparently, that was going to destroy this planet. So there was some good interaction and somewhat diplomacy between the captain of our ship, who was played by one of the participants in this charity game, and the NPC captain of the Klingon capital ship, which was pretty cool, I thought. And then I think my character got to make the last roll to see if the device that he and the engineer had created would suppress or disable this strange tech that created this anomaly. So he rolled really well too. I used my determination. I think I rolled something like 5 successes on the dice, and it was a good ending to a really fun game. And I'd play Star Trek Adventures again. I hope we were the bridge crew and command crew of the USS Riel, and hopefully the tales of the USS Riel will continue in the Star Trek Next Generation universe. Thanks again, Kevin, for running, and again, all the really fun players. I always have a good time with the group of players that Kevin is able to muster to play his games. I have a very special guest. I promised that I was going to interview my wife, Amy, about her character choice in our Savage Worlds Deadlands game. So, Amy, you picked an agent. Why did you pick the agent character?
Well, it's kind of twofold. First of all, it's hard to find a strong female character that's written for a female in a lot of games, not all of them, because I haven't played all of them. And secondly, because I have a real fondness for the Pinkerton Agency. And if you look at the history, the first female agent was Kate Warne. Well, I think it's Warne, Warren. And she was such a female badass. I mean, she literally gave the agency everything it needed from a female that you would find in a male.
Cool. I was actually going to ask you, why did you pick Kate Warne, but you kind of answered it. So, what made Kate Warne a badass? Let's talk about Kate Warne. Other than being the first female Pinkerton, what else did she do?
Well, she was born in 1833, and she was one of the first female spies during the Civil War. And her intrigue on behalf of the Union really kind of started a little bit before the war was actually upon them. And she was looking at how absolutely inappropriate slavery was, even though everyone says the Civil War is not about slavery. In her mindset, it really was. It was about, it's not fair to keep somebody down just because you can, which still goes on in our society today with the way women are treated or minorities. And it's as if we haven't learned anything. But she was a sharpshooter. She had so many aliases, 10 or 15, I think, somewhere around in there. She would dress as a man and tuck her hair up underneath her hat when she would go and literally go up to men and intimidate them. And I don't think they ever knew it was a woman. And then when she needed to, she would flip the other way, let her hair down, never wear a bonnet with her dress, and go after them as far as dancing partners or even a little bit of female intrigue. I guess the womanly wiles.
Cool. So, how do you play, or how have you played your character so far that shows that?
Well, I dress as a man when I'm out as an agent, and I actually speak the lingo that the men would use, and I try very hard to conceal the fact that a woman is blossoming more in the front than a man. And I try very hard to use their idiosyncrasies and their colloquialisms and to really be great with my guns. And that's kind of funny because a guy would have that a different way.
When you talk about guns, you're talking about a guy's muscles, right?
Of course. I'm sure Kate did too.
Right. And I think actually one of the coolest scenes was when you just one of these individuals he was kind of like in the last adventure we played, he was the Big Bad's lieutenant. And there was one scene where you actually, I would say, used your feminine wiles to get this guy literally off balance.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that? I think I briefly talked about it, but it'd be more fun to hear it from your point of view.
Oh, absolutely. So the first time I came across this character, he was rough and tough. I was dressed as an agent, inquiring about a card game with him, and I had done some investigation, so I knew he was not exactly truthful. But he had mentioned the lawman in town. So I thought I would go talk to the lawman. But before I could do that, a ruckus happened in the bar, and some people came out to a traveling salesman and tried to kidnap him. And from my agent's viewpoint, he was in danger. So I saw the lawman, came across a little drunk. So as a woman, I took my fan out, and just started batting my eyelashes and doing what a woman at that time period was expected to do for a man, which was encourage them. And I encouraged him about how cute he was and about his guns, getting back to that, and about how much he was doing for the community. And maybe I might have embellished it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think what was great is you basically, right, so this individual, he was like the marshal in town and a big tough, statted out to fight hand to hand. And I think your character actually, like you said, you wanted to find a character who had some good skills, not just shooting but also being able to fight. And you basically made the guy look foolish by having him trip over himself and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was, to me, was kind of the fun part. You were kind of like danced with him, but then made him somewhat embarrassed, or embarrassed him as well. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. A little more on that point was the fact that I think he might not have made a lot of his influence rolls, and my dice were exploding, so I don't know how successful that's going to be going on with the rest of the game. However, one of the things that Kate used to do, changing back and forth from uniform to dress, was to keep the people that she was investigating on their toes. Was it a woman? Was it a man? Was it a brother? Our society now, just like back then, trusts a man more than a woman. So for a woman to get anything out of somebody, they literally had to betray the fact that they're a female and become a male. And that happens in society now, too.
Yeah, I want to remind people that, I guess I'm just a follow-up to Amy's answering the questions. So Amy did basically destroy that martial character in another scene, firing her character's Gatling gun and having exploding dice, as Amy always does in a combat situation, seemingly, and which is fantastic. Sometimes, hey, luck is great when it's coupled with good skills, so that's what happens. And she offed him, like, with one pass of the Gatling pistol that her character uses. So, as a follow-up, it'd be great if, are there any women out there that listen, or any players that play female characters, and it would be great to get your feedback on how you feel your characters are treated, how you act as a player, what experiences you've had. I think it's a really very interesting topic, and I'm glad that Amy is exploring that in her portrayal of Sam, the agent in our Savage Worlds Deadlands game. We can walk our road together if our goals are all the same. We can run alone and free if we pursue a different aim. Let the love of truth be lighted. Let the truth of love shine clear. Sensibility, on with sense and liberty. with the heart and mind united in a single perfect sphere. I think I'm gonna just end it now after my attempt at that song. If you guess it, hey, that'd be great. I tried singing without music backup for about a minute is a challenge, and I'm sure I used too much vibrato. But I think that those lyrics, there's another set of lyrics somewhere out there that I'll probably try to find and attempt to sing that remind me of this hobby and why I do it. I definitely feel that for me, gaming and music, especially hard rock and heavy metal music, go hand in hand and are intertwined, because those things sort of help me through the nerdy, geeky high school years when I went to school in the 80s, right? So lots of cliques, just like there are today, lots of bullying, but the metal group, the hard rock group, were a safe space, as were the players, the gamers that I hung out with. And hey, what was great is that there was some overlap among those, not just myself, but a lot of other of my friends liked metal. We went to concerts, but we also would play some D&D or D&D or Star Frontiers, or Traveler, I think were the games that we played way back then. So thank you so much for listening, and peace out.